I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 36.1. Questioner, in previous communications you have spoken of the mind, body, spirit complex totality. Would you please give us a definition of the mind, body, spirit complex totality? Answer, I am Ra. There is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind, body, spirit in its eternal dance of the present may be seen in totality, and before the mind, body, spirit complex which then becomes a part of the social memory complex is willingly absorbed into the awareness of the one Creator, the entity knows itself in its totality. This mind, body, spirit complex totality functions as, shall we say, a resource for what you perhaps would call the higher self. The higher self, in turn, is a resource for examining the distillations of third density experience and programming further experience. This is also true of densities 4, 5, and 6 with the mind, body, spirit complex totality coming into consciousness in the course of 7th density. Question 36.2. Questioner, then would the mind, body, spirit complex totality be responsible for programming changes in catalyst during a third density experience of the mind, body, spirit complex so that the proper catalyst would be added, shall we say, as conditions for the complex change during third density experience? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The higher self, as you call it, that self which exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly and assists as you have indicated in further life experience programming, as you may call it. The mind, body, spirit complex totality is that which may be called upon by the higher self aspect just as the mind, body, spirit complex calls upon the higher self. In the one case you have a structured situation within the space-time continuum with the higher self having available to it the totality of experiences which have been collected by an entity and a very firm grasp of the lessons to be learned in this density. The mind, body, spirit complex totality is as the shifting sands and is in some part a collection of parallel developments of the same entity. This information is made available to the higher self aspect. This aspect may then use these projected probability-possibility vortices in order to better aid in what you would call future life programming. Question 36.3. Questioner, out of the Seth material we have a statement in which Seth says that each entity here on earth is one part of or aspect of a higher self or oversoul which has many aspects or parts in many dimensions, all of which learn lessons which allow the higher self to progress in a balanced manner. Am I to understand from this that there are many experiences similar to the one which we experience in the third density which are governed by a single higher self? Answer, I am Ra. The correctness of this statement is variable. The more in balance an entity becomes, the less the possibility-probability vortices may need to be explored in parallel experiences. Question 36.4. Questioner, do I understand from this then that the higher self or oversoul may break down into numerous units if the experience is required to what we would call simultaneously experience different types of catalysts and then oversee these experiences? Answer, I am Ra. This is a statement we cannot say to be correct or incorrect due to the confusions of what you call time. True simultaneity is available only when all things are seen to be occurring at once. This overshadows the concept of which you speak. The concept of various parts of the being living experiences of varying natures simultaneously is not precisely accurate due to your understanding that this would indicate that this was occurring with true simultaneity. This is not the case. The case is from universe to universe and parallel existences can then be programmed by the higher self given the information available from the mind, body, spirit complex totality regarding the probability-possibility vortices at any crux. Question 36.5. Questioner, could you give an example of how this programming by the higher self would then bring about education through parallel experiences? Answer, I am Ra. Perhaps the simplest example of this apparent simultaneity of existence of two selves, which are in truth one self at the same time space, is this: the oversoul, as you call it, or higher self, seems to exist simultaneously with the mind-body-spirit complex which it aids. This is not actually simultaneous, for the higher self is moving to the mind-body-spirit complex as needed from a position and development of the entity which will be considered in the future of this entity. Question 36.6. Questioner: then the higher self operates from the future as we understand things. In other words, my higher self would operate from what I consider to be my future. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. From the standpoint of your spacetime, this is correct. Question 36.7. Questioner: in that case my higher self would have a very large advantage in knowing what was needed, since it would know, as far as I am concerned, what was going to happen. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is incorrect, in that this would be an abrogation of free will. The higher self aspect is aware of the lessons learned through the sixth density. The progress rate is fairly well understood. The choices which must be made to achieve the higher self as it is are in the provenance of the mind-body-spirit complex itself. Thus the higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. However, the higher self aspect can program only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity. There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. Question 36.8. Questioner: I'm sorry for having so much trouble with these concepts, but they are very difficult, I am sure, to translate into our understanding and language. Some of my questions may be rather ridiculous, but does this higher self have some type of vehicle like our physical vehicle? Does it have a bodily complex? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. The higher self is of a certain advancement within sixth density going into the seventh. After the seventh has been well entered, the mind-body-spirit complex becomes so totally a mind-body-spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus the looking backwards is finished at that point. Question 36.9. Questioner: is the higher self of every entity of a sixth density nature? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. This is an honor duty of self to self as one approaches seventh density. Question 36.10. Questioner: let me be sure that I understand this then. We have spoken of certain particular individuals. For instance, we were speaking of George Patton in a previous communication. Then his higher self at the time of his incarnation here as George Patton about 40 years ago was of sixth density. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. We make note at this time that each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by an entity to be the mind-body-spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case. The mind-body-spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur held in understanding, the higher self itself a projection or manifestation of mind-body-spirit complex totality which then may communicate with the mind-body-spirit during the discarnate part of the cycle of rebirth or during the incarnation, may communicate if the proper pathways or channels through the roots of mind are opened. Question 36.11. Questioner: these channels would then be opened by meditation, and I am assuming that the intense polarization would help in this. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is partially correct. Intense polarization does not necessarily develop, in the mind-body-spirit complex, the will or need to contact the oversoul. Each path of life experience is unique. However, given the polarization, the will is greatly enhanced and vice versa. Question 36.12. Questioner: let me take as an example the one that you said was called Himmler. We are assuming from this that his higher self was of the sixth density, and it was stated that Himmler had selected the negative path. Would his higher self then dwell in a sixth density negative type of situation? Can you expand on this concept? Answer: I am Ra. There are no negative beings which have attained the oversoul manifestation, which is the honor duty of the mind-body-spirit complex totality, of late sixth density as you would term it in your time measurements. These negatively oriented mind, body, spirit complexes have a difficulty which to our knowledge has never been overcome, for after fifth density graduation wisdom is available but must be matched with an equal amount of love. This love light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, and during the earlier part of the sixth density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the sixth density positive. Therefore, the oversoul which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity depending upon the choice of a mind, body, spirit complex.